Welcome everybody to Political Science 501, Introduction to the Graduate Study of Politics. Tonight, we have Dr. Ali Nizamuddin. Tell us something about your early upbringing. Where were you born? What was life like there, etc.?
I was born in Hyderabad, India. And one of the jokes that I played on my students in Appalachia was that in the IR class, I walked in with a very thick Indian accent. How's everybody doing today? I would love to. And I went through the whole thing, and then how I talked about how my dad was, owned a 7-Eleven and a taxi driver, and all of the different stereotypes. And then I began to speak normally. I don't know why I did that, just to lighten the mood, I guess. But yes, I was born in India, and I was 8 years old when I first came here in 1977. And we settled in the Chicago area initially, and then we moved to the suburbs of Downers Grove. Life was very traditional back in Hyderabad. We had one light, and the rest of the time we had kerosene lights. So one of the main rooms was the only room that had an actual light that you turn on and off. We didn't have any TV. We had one radio, a very small transistor radio, and nobody listened to it except for once a week for half an hour to listen to a comedy show. But otherwise, a very communal, extended family concept, Indian family concept. And we were always playing, always running, always doing things. And there were no devices of any kind to distract us. So life was very communal, very traditional, and just full of different activities. So anyway.
You're muted. Professor, you're muted.
Thank you. Tell us something about the politics, society, and culture in this place.
Hyderabad, yeah, I just talked about Hyderabad. Downers Grove was also very traditional, as you know, DuPage County. And so then I moved to Appalachia from 2002 through 2007. After receiving my PhD in New York, I moved to Appalachia, which was soon after 9/11. And they still refer to the Civil War as the War of Northern Aggression. So you can imagine seeing the Confederate flags. You can imagine us being the only Indians on campus at a small private liberal arts college soon after 9/11. But for the most part, we were very much so welcomed by the campus community, but sometimes we would not be as welcomed as if we went outside of the sanctuary of the campus. So when we went into certain areas or when we went hiking or something like that, it was a very different experience and encounter. And that's understandable. It's just simply a lack of socialization. We are byproducts of our socialism, what we are exposed to. So it's really not their fault that they were myopic in that way. It's simply the fact that they have never seen or definitely been taught by somebody who comes from a South Asian background. So, yeah.
Thank you. When did you know that political science was the path for you, and who most affected your decision to pursue graduate school?
So if in Indian culture, you're either going to be a doctor or you're going to be an engineer or a computer programmer, right? That's just the way it is. Or you're going to start some sort of a business. I didn't want to do any one of those things, but instead I wanted to, we come from a family of teachers, my grandfather, my father. And so I wanted to go into the teaching profession. And I knew that I was always interested in international politics or world affairs. And so in junior year at Northwestern, I took a course, Introduction to International Relations, and the professor is still there, Michael Lorio. And he went through all of the different concepts and theories and paradigms and then applied it to specific issue areas. And I thought this is just a fascinating subfield to get into. And that's eventually how I got into political science. So if there was one singular person, it was this particular professor. But otherwise, it was my father who really encouraged us to achieve the highest possible education we can attain. Yeah.
All right. Please describe some of the courses you teach, especially your graduate ones.
Okay, I teach a total of 10 courses. A lot of them are at the undergraduate level, but if there is a couple of specific courses at the graduate level, some of the undergraduate courses I teach is courses like global issues or international relations or comparative politics or economic analysis, what is power. Those are the types of comparative political cultures, which is one of my favorite courses to teach, because we go over the universal values inherent in all traditions, whether it be Confucian or African or Indian and so forth. But the course at the graduate level would be international relations, the seminar in international relations, the PSC 515 course. And that is an excellent course if you are interested in taking that particular course, along with economic analysis. Economic analysis is also at the 400 level, which students at the graduate level should be able to take.
All right. How would you describe your teaching style and teaching philosophy?
I'm going to combine the fifth and the sixth questions about what do I want the students to retain after their encounter with the class. I am very interested in cultivating empathy. And Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, captured this sentiment of empathy by saying that when you read a newspaper, and if you read that there have been 17 Filipinos who died as a result of some accident or a tsunami or some sinking of a ship, and if you can replace Filipino with American to see if it cultivates the same visceral response in you. So I thought that was a very good explanation of empathy, or a description of empathy, where we need to empathize with the other. And that is one of the things that I'm working on right now in our encounter with the other. So I like to look at the world from the perspective of the one being whipped and not the person whipping. So from the perspective of the slave and not the slave master. From the perspective of the one being lynched. How does the world look like for that person who's lynched? So how does the world look like for that person as compared to the person doing the lynching? So how do we cultivate sympathy for the most vulnerable of our society? I guess that's one thing I would like for the students to take from the course. But also, when I do present a topic, I try to present it from the perspective of that person. So, and this is something that my professors taught me. So if you're going to present Marx, vicariously become a Marxist. And if you're going to present on say Adam Smith, become Adam Smith. So I try to do that so as to do justice to that particular topic.
All right. Please tell us something about your scholarly interests.
I am very interested in, initially within the subfield of international relations, I was interested in IPE, international political economy, or the confluence of international politics and international economics. More specifically, I was interested in the state multinational bargaining power debate. How does bargaining power look like over the life cycle of an investment project? And so the bargaining dynamic between the firm, mostly from the industrialized world, and the host government, from mostly the developing world, like India, China, and so forth. More recently, my work has expanded to a focus on how corporations impact our lives. And now I'm interested in issues related to corporate propaganda and war, which I will discuss today. By the way, today is the first time that I'm presenting a good portion of one of the chapters of my book for the first time.
Well, that's fantastic. We're the debut crowd.
Yeah. And I'm going to apply it to what's happening nowadays with corporate propaganda and war, and specifically the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
All right. Why do you think it's important to study what you study?
We know that what happens elsewhere profoundly impacts us, right? So what happens in the rest of the world does impact us, and we are citizens, I like to think, of two republics, ours and the world. So there was an interesting anti-war protester who had a sign in 2003 when there was millions of people who took to the streets protesting against the Second Persian Gulf War. And the sign read, "Wars, How Americans Learn Geography." And that is very true and quite unfortunate that we hear about Kandahar or Mosul or Tikrit as a result of our involvement in other parts of the world. So shedding light on what's happening elsewhere and how it impacts us is something that I think is extremely important. And how propaganda, more specifically, impacts us at a personal level is something that I'm also very interested in. So these things that we consider to be distant and opaque impact us directly.
So what are the contributions to scholarship and to policy of your work?
Can I get to that when I discuss my stuff, my chapter?
Totally.
That'd be okay?
Oh, yeah.
So you can clearly tell the implications of this work on the lives of everyday people. Please.
I'm also going to skip 10 because that's what you're working on right now, and that's
right.
Also
precisely.
If students share your interests, what classes would you recommend they take?
The two that I mentioned, I love teaching undergraduate students. I really do, because they're so new to the subject matter, and I get students from all different backgrounds because my courses fulfill certain requirements, certain general education requirements. And so, but it is a true blessing to teach graduate students because you learn so much from them. You learn so much from them. And so the two courses would be economic analysis, of course, as well as the seminar, and which with every single one of my courses, I have the classical books, of course, but also I incorporate a novel. So, for example, in the global issues course, one of the novel that we read is The Reluctant Fundamentalist, how somebody becomes a fundamentalist and becomes radicalized. And what are the legitimate grievances that the person sees and experiences that causes him to become radicalized? And in comparative politics, we read the Nigerian novel Things Fall Apart. Or in the IR class, we read Lone Survivor. Or in the in one of the other courses, we read Walking with the Comrades, which deals with Maoist rebels. So in economic analysis, we read Walking with the Comrades. So what does life look like for the Maoist rebels, or the Indian government has sort of besmirched as Maoist rebels in the villages and the forests of India? So what that is designed to do is to provide an opportunity where we can learn from other people. And that is really one of my main focus, is to not just learn about people, but from them. And the best way, you cannot leave my class without learning something about another culture or another way or another worldview or another tradition. So, yeah.
Thank you. What would an MA exam or thesis look like under your supervision?
Similar to what we are doing, going over variables, making sure that people know exactly, approaching the topic from the hourglass model, going from the general to the specific, knowing exactly what the research puzzle is, what is the gap within the literature, what is the literature review, the research design. So basically not, which is of course everybody, all of them, conceptualizing what we are studying, and not just or providing an analytical framework or a lens to the specific case study.
All right. Recalling your experiences as a graduate student, what advice would you give to our MA students? And we give a lot of advice, so if you want to
Yeah. Well, just taking pride in our work, making sure that we pay attention to detail. Our work is a reflection of our effort and who we really are. And so, just taking a lot of pride in what we do. The reason I don't want to share the video is because, as you know, John, that because of the medical reason. I have nystagmus, and I have a very advanced form of macular degeneration. So the nystagmus causes involuntary movement of the eyelids, and it's extremely distracting for students. If I were to go ahead and show that, that's why even when I give a lecture on campus, I have my gaze lowered. But that doesn't, my challenges, my physical limitations should not prevent me from doing something with excellence. And that's something that if I can do it, anybody can do it. So, yeah, I wish I can go ahead and I have, like, as you know, I have had where I share the camera, but then I know for a fact it's distracting. And it takes me away from what I'm trying to convey. So there's just no benefit in it. So it's not because I don't want to be, I'm not telegenic or whatever. But anyway, so